Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gemma. I have two daughters, Elizabeth and Penelope, hence the name Ellie and Nellie. This is my second time filming this from start to finish because I wanted to do it some justice. There are probably so many more pros and cons to home and hospital births that just aren't in this little head of mine. So if you watch this video and I haven't mentioned any that you can think of, then please do drop a comment below. What the hell was that? It's like some kind of bug in my hair. I've tried to break this video down into the pros and cons of like planning and then actually when you're in labour and then the recovery and following labour as well. So there is so much to talk about. So without further ado, let's jump straight to the video. So I'm going to start with the pros of planning a home birth. It's your house. You can plan whatever birth you want. I'm not saying your birth will go exactly to plan because I'm not sure on percentages, but there aren't many that go exactly to birth plans anyway. But the choices are endless. So you've got different rooms you can choose to be in. You've got different lighting. So I just had candlelight. You can also choose which snacks you've got in. Obviously you can in hospital. However, you might be a bit limited because you maybe don't have access to fridges or obviously cookers and microwaves. When you're planning a home birth, you also have the choice of when to call a midwife. So some people like to wait till the very end and some people like to do it really early on just so they know the midwife is aware, but that's completely down to you as a mother. Pros when it comes to planning a hospital birth is basically the plans are all in place for you. And what I mean by that is the bed's ready, the room's ready, the sheets are ready, the room is sterilised and ready. It's all prepared for birth. In a home environment, you may have to move furniture around. You might feel like you have to really scrub and clean and sterilise the area, which it's already done at hospital. So the cons of planning a home birth. So this one's quite sad, but a lot of women feel like they have a struggle when it comes to getting the home birth that they want, depending on where you live, depending on the pregnancy that you have. Some women feel like their voices don't get heard. It may feel sometimes like they're being told they can't have a home birth, which you can't be told that you can't have a home birth. But sometimes when you're being told that there's so many risks involved and when you're being told that they would like you to be in hospital, that can be heard as you can't have a home birth. But those statements are very different and you can't physically be told that you cannot have a home birth. So that's another con, is that if you are being told that they wouldn't advise a home birth and you still choose to have a home birth, you may then have to sort of declare that you are going against medical advice, which I did. It's pretty straightforward and simple to do. I think you just sign a piece of paper just to say that you understand the risks, which is easy enough to do, but that could put some women off having a home birth that they may have wanted. So then moving on to the cons of planning a hospital birth. Yes, the space is ready for you. However, because it is all the hospital's equipment, you may be limited in what you can use. So if you want a birthing pool, you can very well put that into your birthing plan from the beginning. And of course, they'll take that into consideration. But when it comes to you going in labour, they don't know when that's going to be. So you could go into labour and that night, another woman might be using that birthing pool. It's not always guaranteed that you will get that birthing pool. And with my first pregnancy, I was also told that I wouldn't have the choice of the midwifery unit. So that's like it's more of, they call it a home away from home, I think. But again, if they've already told you that you can't use those facilities, then you're already restricted to whichever room you're given. The con of planning hospital birth would also be what to pack. And yes, you probably will still pack a bag for a home birth because you don't know if you might then need to go into hospital anyway. But I feel like a lot of people panic for weeks and weeks before they're even due to give birth. They panic about what to get in the bag, what does the baby need, and to be honest, they panic more than they need to. As long as you've got some clothes for the baby, the hospital will have extra things that you might run out of, and even before that, it might be your partner or your birthing partner will be leaving the hospital at some point and they can just pop out and get some more nappies or wipes, or like if you forget something, it really isn't the end of the world. Another con though would be how to get there. So if you don't drive, it would be obviously either ambulance or taxi, which I do drive. However, I'm the only driver, so Brandon wouldn't have been able to drive me. So moving on to when you're actually in labour. The pros of being at home, basically everything that you've planned is at your disposal. Whatever prep work you've done, so if you've got birth affirmations on the wall, if you've practiced hypnobirthing, That's all at your disposal. I had a shopping list that Brandon had to get for me just before I went into labour. But everything in your house is yours, and it feels so good to have everything that makes you feel comfortable, everything that makes you feel homely and warm and safe is right there with you. And you know that if you need something, you can go right over there to the cupboard and get it. And you don't have to worry about leaving the house. Obviously, if further on into the labour, the midwife arrives and she's a bit worried and advises to go into hospital, things might change then. However, in that moment, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about leaving the house. You don't have to worry about moving. It is nice to go into labour and not have to think, right, how do we get to hospital? When do I call the hospital? What might my room be like? What do we need to pack? Have we packed everything? All those questions going through your head. It's nice not to have that. So for these next few points I'm going to mention, I will leave some links down in the description box because I don't want to just kind of state them and not give you the facts to go with it. So with a home birth, there is less chance of infection, less chance of a cesarean, less chance of medical intervention, so that's forceps or ventouse, I think I've said that right. And you also, if this is your second, third, fourth or whatever child, you have a better chance of having a VBAC, so that's a vaginal birth after cesarean. So that moves me on to the pros of being in labour in a hospital environment. There's no mess. If you make a mess, it's not yours to worry about. So obviously, if a hospital environment is where you feel safe, that in itself is a pro to having a hospital birth. And the obvious pro of having a hospital birth is the fact that the midwives and the doctors are there if needed, which I did with my first labour. So they do have such an important role to play in the times when they are needed. That's the best way to put it. So moving on to the cons of the labour process in a home environment. If you do end up needing to be taken to hospital, there's no guarantee on when that might be. It could be that they decide when you're 8, 9, 10 centimetres dilated, something's going wrong and they need to get you to hospital. Which, I don't know, some people that I've heard stories from have said that their transfer to hospital, it wasn't stressful, it was done really calmly and it didn't affect their experience at all, so that is great. But if I think about being at home and almost about to push, almost being at the end of the journey, and then suddenly you have to go into hospital, I think that would throw me off a little bit. So obviously, as I mentioned, a pro being in hospital, you don't have to worry about the mess. Obviously at home, you do have to worry about the mess. If you plan for that appropriately, so you have all the sheets and waterproof liners, and I had plastic sheets over the sofa, all sorts. If you plan it appropriately, you shouldn't have that much of a problem with. If you have previous children, you might have to worry about making sure you've got a babysitter, depending on where you live and who's nearby, and also when you go into labour, like you just don't know when it's going to happen. I personally also found a teeny tiny con to be that moment just before you're about to push the baby out. You have a moment of panic. Everyone has it wherever you are, hospital or home, but I felt like I had more of a panic at home because suddenly it went through my head, oh my god, I'm at home. Even though I planned it the whole way through my pregnancy, suddenly in that second I was like, so whilst you're at home, you also don't have the full range of options when it comes to pain relief. So if you suddenly decide you need more pain relief, then you will have to be transferred to hospital. There is so many options of pain relief at home though. So you've got your hypnobirthing, you've got TENS machine, you've got hypnobirthing. Did I say that? Yeah, they also bring gas. They also bring gas and air. They used to bring pethidine, which is an injection, but they don't anymore because it can make the baby drowsy. But personally, I found my home birth to be less painful because I was so much calmer. So, moving on to the cons of being in labour in a hospital. The con of being in a hospital environment is that your movement might be restricted, depending on the layout of your room, depending on whether you agree to being monitored in certain ways. So I was constantly monitored, so I was strapped up to like things, and though you're meant to be able to move around with those machines, like you could wheel it around the room, it still feels very medical, and you feel like you feel restricted. Another con is that you're also not in your own environment. I've already mentioned this, but not being in your own environment has been proven to slow down progression. It's not somewhere where you feel safe and secure. Unless it is, then ignore me. But Hospitals are usually linked to sickness and being hurt, maybe pain, and all of these things aren't helpful to the labour process. Another con that I personally found was that the midwife, every time she popped in, it was a distraction, which obviously they have to do, they have to check up on you, but my midwife was great in hospital. I can't fault her for the way she knew I wanted a home birth. She let me turn the lights off. She brought in some fairy lights for me. She was amazing. But obviously every time she came into the room and the door opened and the big light came in, and it was just really distracting. It would just always break my like hypnobirthing mindset. I was away in my own place. And the child is awake. Moving straight on to the pros of after you've been in labour, the recovery stage. Obviously the first and biggest pro is that you can just go to bed. So you're tired, you've given birth to a baby, your baby's probably tired because it's just been through labour. You can go to bed. Go to bed. Once the midwife has sorted all the paperwork out, you can head on up them stairs and go to sleep. You are also more likely to have a faster recovery with a home birth. Moving across to the pros of after birth in a hospital, the food gets brought to you. You get toast and stuff brought to you. Apparently that's the best slice of toast people have ever eaten. That's what I've heard. I was very, very sick with both labours, so I didn't really eat after either because I was still throwing up for a good couple of hours after both. But apparently, so I've heard, it's the best slice of toast. Another pro is there's also no cleaning up, so again, that gets done for you. So our last set of cons, which are after birth again. If you're at home, if you've got nobody else to do it, you're gonna have to clean up. I was super lucky. My mum was actually at the birth. She was at both births. We obviously, as I said in the pros, we went straight to bed as soon as the midwife had gone, and Grandma and Grandad cleaned up the house, so that was great. The pool had gone, all the sheets had gone, and they just wrapped them all up and disposed of them, and it was like it had never happened. But if you don't have anyone else to do that for you, that would be a con. Inevitably, you're gonna have to clean up whatever mess might have been made. Another con could be that depending on what happens with the labour, even if you have given birth, there may be different reasons that the midwife might still want to transfer. There may be different reasons why the midwife might still want to transfer you into hospital. But if you try and be as positive as you can, you could still look at it as you've had your home birth. So if you transfer to hospital afterwards, it's not that big of a deal. But moving on to the cons of after birth in a hospital environment, you may not be able to leave as soon as you want to leave. So you might have had it in your head that you might give birth on like the Tuesday and then you might be able to go home on the Wednesday. That's not always the case. And again, the opposite of the pro of the home birth is that recovery tends to be longer in a hospital. I hope that helps anyone that was thinking about their choices between home and hospital birth. And to the question of should you have a home or hospital birth, sadly, I can't give you that, and nobody else can give you that answer. You have to listen to your doctors, your midwives, you have to listen to any risks they might bring up. You have to then take the initiative to research those risks, decide how risky you feel they are, look at the statistics, research. Make sure you're looking at like official websites as well. Don't obviously go looking on dodgy websites for dodgy statistics. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a big thumbs up. Ooh, and if you would like to see anything more from me, then please do subscribe.